It was a peaceful evening at the Regent Grand Hotel, one of the most luxurious hotels in Los Angeles. The lobby sparkled with crystal chandeliers, and soft classical music played in the background as wealthy guests checked in, their designer luggage wheeled behind them by attentive bell. Among the arrivals was Sandra Bullock, dressed in casual yet elegant attire, sunglasses perched on her head. She had just landed after a long flight and was looking forward to a relaxing night before an important meeting the next morning. The Regent Grand was her go-to hotel, known for its discretion and first-class service. As she approached the reception desk, she smiled at the receptionist, a young woman named Claire, who appeared poised and professional at first. "Good evening. I have a reservation under Sandra Bullock," she said warmly, sliding her ID across the marble counter. Claire took the ID, glanced at the screen, then frowned slightly. She hesitated before speaking, her voice laced with skepticism. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't see a reservation under your name," Claire said, her tone suddenly distant. Sandra furrowed her brows. "That's strange. I booked a suite a week ago." Claire let out a small, dismissive chuckle, barely concealing her disbelief. "Are you sure it was this hotel? Maybe you confused it with another one." A few guests standing nearby turned their heads. Sandra could feel their curious glances, and heat rose to her cheeks. "I am sure," she replied, maintaining her composure. "Can you check again?" Claire sighed dramatically and tapped at the keyboard, pretending to search. After a moment, she shook her head. "Nope, no reservation under Bullock, and we're fully booked tonight. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." Sandra clenched her jaw, sensing something off. The Regent Grand was always accommodating to her, and she had never had an issue before. But Claire's smug expression hinted that this was not just a mistake, it was personal. "Perhaps," Claire continued, eyeing Sandra up and down, "you can try a different hotel. There's a nice one down the street that's a little more fitting." That was it. Sandra's patience snapped. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me." All heads turned. Standing a few feet away was Keanu Reeves, dressed in a simple yet stylish black outfit, his presence effortlessly commanding attention. He had been waiting for his own check-in when he overheard the conversation. His sharp eyes moved between Sandra and Claire. Keanu stepped forward, placing his hands on the counter. His voice was calm but firm. "Is there a problem here?" Claire instantly straightened, her smug attitude faltering. "Oh, Mr. Reeves," she stammered. I was just explaining to Miss Bullock that we don't have a reservation under her name." Keanu turned to Sandra. "You made a reservation here, right?" Sandra nodded. "Yes, and I have the confirmation email to prove it." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. Claire paled slightly as Sandra displayed the email. The truth was right in front of her. Keanu leaned in slightly. "It looks like there is a reservation," he said, his tone unwavering. "So why is there an issue?" The lobby had gone silent. A few hotel employees were whispering amongst themselves, watching the scene unfold. Claire swallowed nervously. I must have made an error in the system." Keanu gave a slow, knowing nod. "An error." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, with the same effortless charm he was known for, he smiled politely. "Mistakes happen, but when someone chooses to be disrespectful, that's a different issue." Claire's face turned red. The hotel manager, who had just arrived on the scene, quickly intervened. "Miss Bullock, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience," the manager said, glaring at Claire. "Your suite is ready, and we'll ensure you receive the best service for the rest of your stay." Sandra exhaled, shaking off the frustration. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Keanu turned to Sandra. "I was about to grab a drink at the bar. Care to join me?" Sandra hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "You know what? That sounds like a great idea." As they walked toward the lounge, Sandra glanced at him. "You really didn't have to step in like that." Keanu smirked. "I know, but I figured you'd do the same for me." Sandra chuckled. "That's true, but I have to ask, what would you have done if she still refused to check me in?" Keanu thought for a second, then grinned. "Booked the penthouse and invited you as my guest." Sandra burst out laughing. That would have been legendary. Meanwhile, back at the front desk, Claire sat frozen in her chair, still processing what had just happened. The whispers among the staff confirmed what she already knew. Her career at the Regent Grand might have just ended, and in the bar, as Keanu and Sandra toasted to the unexpected chaos of the night. One thing was clear, Keanu Reeves was not just a kind soul, but someone who always stood up for what was right. The next morning, Sandra Bullock woke up feeling far more refreshed than she expected. The tension from the previous night had melted away. Thanks to Keanu's effortless charm and the way he had turned an embarrassing moment into something she could laugh about. She stretched, yawned, and checked her phone. A message from Keanu was already waiting. "Keanu, morning, Sandra. Hope you got some good sleep. I'll be in the lobby if you want to grab breakfast. No drama this time, hopefully." Sandra chuckled to herself. She quickly freshened up, threw on a comfortable yet stylish outfit, and headed downstairs. As she entered the hotel's elegant dining area, Sandra spotted Keanu sitting near a large window overlooking the city skyline. He was dressed casually, sipping coffee, completely unfazed by the whispers and stolen glances from guests who had clearly recognized him. "Look at you," Sandra teased as she approached. "Mr. Mysterious at the breakfast table." Keanu smirked. "And look at you, fully recovered from your traumatic check-in experience." Sandra sat across from him, ordering a coffee before leaning in. "I have to say, you really saved the day yesterday. But tell me, how often do you go around rescuing damsels in distress at fancy hotels?" Keanu shrugged. "Only when the damsel in distress happens to be Sandra Bullock." She laughed, shaking her head. "Flattery will get you a free breakfast, my friend." They chatted over coffee and croissants, swapping old Hollywood stories and reminiscing about their speed days. It felt natural, easy even. But as their breakfast neared its end, Keanu set his cup down and gave her a thoughtful look. "Hey, Sandra," he began, "I actually wanted to ask you something." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "Uh-oh, that sounds serious." Keanu chuckled. "Not that serious. But I've been working on a project, a script. Actually, it's something different, something I think you'd be perfect for." Sandra blinked in surprise. "White, you wrote a script?" Keanu nodded. "Correct. It's been in the works for a while. It's an action drama, but with a lot of heart. I wasn't sure who I wanted for the lead female role until last night. Watching you handle that situation, your energy, it just clicked. You'd be amazing in it." Sandra leaned back, crossing her arms with a smirk. "So, you're telling me that getting humiliated by a receptionist landed me a movie role?" Keanu grinned. "Pretty much." She studied him for a moment, searching his face. He wasn't the type to throw out casual offers if he was bringing this up. He truly meant it. "All right," she said finally, a slow smile spreading across her lips. "I'm interested, but I have one condition." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Name it." Sandra leaned in, her voice playful. "If I say yes, you owe me a rematch at that pool game from last night." Keanu laughed. "Deal, but I warn you, I don't lose twice." She clinked her coffee cup against his. "We'll see about that, Reeves." As the two actors finished their breakfast, the events of the previous night already felt like a distant memory. What had started as an awkward, humiliating check-in had unexpectedly turned into something much bigger, a new opportunity, a rekindled friendship, and maybe, just maybe, the start of a new chapter for both of them. And as for Claire, the receptionist, well, she wasn't there that morning. Rumor had it she had been reassigned to a much less glamorous position. Sometimes, life had a funny way of turning things around. Later that afternoon, Sandra found herself strolling through Beverly Hills, lost in thought. Keanu's offer still lingered in her mind. She had read dozens of scripts over the years, but there was something intriguing about the way he had presented this one, like it truly meant something to him. Her phone buzzed. A message from Keanu. "Keanu, hey, I have a meeting with the producer this evening. Want to join? No pressure. Just a chance to meet everyone and see if you vibe with the project." Sandra smirked. "He's smooth." "Sandra, fine. But if this is some secret ploy to make me pay for dinner, I'm on to you, Keanu. Damn, you caught me." She chuckled before typing her final response. "Sandra, I'll be there." That evening, Sandra arrived at the Sunset Room, a high-end restaurant known for its exclusivity. As soon as she walked in, she spotted Keanu at a private table with two other people, a middle-aged man in a tailored suit and a woman in a chic black dress. Keanu stood as she approached. "Right on time," Sandra smirked. "Of course, we didn't want to keep Mr. Hollywood waiting." Keanu rolled his eyes, introducing her to the others. The man was Richard Kane, a well-known producer, and the woman, Elena Wu, was the film's director. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Sandra," Richard said, shaking her hand. "Keanu has been hyping you up." Sandra glanced at Keanu with a teasing smirk. "Oh, is that so?" Keanu shrugged. "Only the truth." Elena leaned in. "We're thrilled that you're even considering the role. When Keanu mentioned you, something just clicked. I think you'd bring something really special to the film." Sandra appreciated their enthusiasm, but she wasn't the type to jump into things blindly. "Well, I'd love to hear more before I make any decisions." Richard nodded. "Of course. The film is called Solace. It's not your typical action flick. It's about two former spies, one retired, one still in the game, who cross paths years after a mission went horribly wrong. It's action-packed but deeply emotional. And we want you to play Eleanor Gray, the retired agent forced back into the world she left behind." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "So, a badass with emotional baggage. I like it," Elena chuckled. "Exactly." As the conversation continued, Sandra found herself genuinely intrigued. The script wasn't just another Hollywood blockbuster, it had depth, nuance, and, more importantly, Keanu's passion for the project was evident. Then came the kicker. Richard leaned forward. "We also have another proposition." Sandra sipped her wine. "I'm listening." Elena smiled. "We don't just want you to star in the film, we want you to co-produce." Sandra nearly choked on her drink. "Wait," Keanu grinned. "Surprise," Richard nodded. We want your creative input. You've been in the industry long enough to know what makes a great film. Having you involved behind the scenes would take this to the next level." Sandra leaned back, processing. This wasn't just another role, this was an opportunity. And the idea of working so closely with Keanu on something they both cared about. That was a rare find in Hollywood. She glanced at Keanu, who was watching her with that knowing look, as if he already knew what she was thinking. Finally, she exhaled. "You know what?" she smirked. "I'm in." Keanu's face lit up, and Elena clapped her hands together. "Fantastic." Richard raised his glass. To solace, Sandra clinked her glass against theirs, a sense of excitement bubbling inside her. The day had started with an embarrassing encounter at a hotel lobby, but somehow it had led to something bigger than she could have imagined. And as she sat there, laughing with Keanu and her new partners, she realized sometimes the best stories aren't the ones scripted in Hollywood. They're the ones life throws at you when you least expect them.